Alright, 151. Affect the temperature of the lubricating quality of the oil. At what temperature does the engine oil lose the lubricating qualities? Valve oil. Answer. What temperature is increased above the flashing burning point at near the temperature of the oil that is to the burning point or the less or as in lubricating qualities? Engine oil usually burns at the temperature of the range of 380 to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Valve oil at 680 degrees to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. 152 mile runs per ton coal. The pound of the oil, coal per 100 ton mile. One monthly coal report went by miles run per ton of coal. What by pounds of coal used per 100 ton mile. The monthly cost report made with up in this form with the purpose of showing the amount of the coal used for the H for the engine and the miles run per month and per ton of the coal. By dividing the number made by the number of the ton of the coal, you usually get the miles run per ton. But thus, the engine made 3,000 miles, but consumed the 150 tons of the coal. 3,000 divided by 150 would equal 220 miles per ton of coal. This would not be the fair comparison as the engine in making with largest number of the pounds per ton of coal would possibly have the lighter train, but consequently would be earning less of the revenue with the company the engine that have the heavier train, the very much heavier coal consumption. Hence, the ton of the mile is ton mile basis in which each of the engines is given credit for the number of the tons hauled with the 1 mile with 100 or 100 ton mile. Their system issue for the engines are and should be grappled with in similar devices. Similar serve with the passenger trains for opposite run with the freight train for the opposite run, such that the time freight stock of locals rounds miscellaneous services. This makes all into the same group of the class of the service comparable to each other. Also, the engine men, in making comparison between the engine with the men time with the speed, but should be not overlooked. While the one engine with the crew should most may show up poorly with the performance sheet that have been made with more time, the engine holding the better record of the slow term of the crew would maybe cover the increased coal consumption per 100 ton mile. The fast crew would decrease it. To find pounds of coal used for the per 100 ton mile, the multiple of coal of them in pounds with 100 divided by the tons multiplied with the number of miles hauled. The example of a 600 ton train is hauled over a 200 mile division with 20 ton of coals are used to find the number of the pounds of the coals of 100 ton per mile. 12 tons are 24,000 pounds. 24,000 pounds times 100 ton miles is 2,400,000. 600 tons times 200 miles is 120,000. 240,000, 2,400,000, 20 pounds of coal used for the 100 ton per mile, 204 million or zero. 153. General form of the locomotive boiler. To describe the general form of the locomotive boiler and explain the use of the cylinder part of the boiler. And the locomotive boiler is a cylindrical form of the rectangular shaped firebox and back end of the smoke box, other end of the flue for the cylindrical part with which is surrounded with the water. The cylindrical part is used in the smoke box with the flue sheet with the secure of the throat with the slope of the sheet with the wagon type of the firebox at each end to provide a place for the dry pipe of the flues. 154. Engine supports. At what point is engine support in working order? And supported with on the rails for the frame of the boiler, resting on the support with the engine truck stand over the front end of the fulcrums, equalizing at these points the tension of the weight is transferred from the equalizer spring to the spring saddler's rear, so directly on the driving box. 155. Setting and slip eccentrics. How would you set the slip eccentrics? Answer. If you forward the motion, eccentric would slip would place on the front, forward, center, on the side, with the putting the lever in the full grate, your back position, making a mark on the valve of the stem, even the gland, then put the lever in the full gear forward, move the forward motion eccentric until the mark on the valve stem show in the same position as what it was made when it was made. Similar setting of slip eccentric good eccentric. You can obtain the quite different good rule results placing the engine with the forward center of the lever in the full gear forward to open the cylinder cocks, move the eccentric until the steam is shows forward cylinder cock. This will get you in and much quicker than the same method can be employed. Setting back motion eccentric has been slipped. 156. Number of exhausts in a revolution. How often does the ordinary locomotive exhaust system do a revolution during a revolution of the driving wheels? At what point does the exhaust take place? Each cylinder has a steam admitted with each of the end of the push of the piston with the one end of the cylinder to the other and back in the order, completing one revolution of the driver. Therefore, there will be two strokes of the piston, two exhausts, each of the cylinder for each of the revolution of the driver's four exhausts, and all exhausts taking place when the piston is nearly the end of the stroke. Frequently, the exhaust ports open the release stem at 75 to 85% and with the stroke of the piston, depending on the exhaust edge of the valve. If the valve has inside clearance, the exhaust will be easier earlier. If inside the lap exhaust, it will be later. And they have a talk with the valve setter, by asking him to show the valve motion card showing the opening of the closing of the exhaust of the class of engines you desire to know about. If the valve is lined with the line inside, locate the center of the valve stem between the port marks and by using the train with the center mark, you will find the point of the stroke of the exhaust openings. And also, when the port marks come back to the tram point, it will indicate that the point at which the exhaust closed when the valve is in line inside, placed in the center of on the seat of that the exhaust ports are closed with the mark of the made in the center between the ports. Mark will show the position of the valve and its end and just when the port opens and the tram is used. Valve gear, the name of the different parts of the engine and operate with the control valve motion. Briefly, the parts of the eccentric strap, eccentric rod, link of the saddle, link of the hanger, tumbling shaft, and linking arms, the reach rod, and reach rods, reverse link, lever, link block, rocker, link arm, and valves, arm blocks, or valve rods. 158. Cars are not heated with the valve heated while gauge shows the required pressure. If the seam has heat gauge show the required pressure at the end of the cars would not be heated properly, how would you proceed to locate the trouble? Answer: close the shutoff valve on the train line with an uncoupled the seam hose between the engine of the train. Open the shutoff valve with the pressure regulating valve in the manner to determine the seam was given the furnished back off the engine. When the couple of the seam engine heat hoses and open all the valves here through the rear end of the train, this will show the seam is or not obstructed by the main steam heat pipe. The next to close the valve and rear end of the last carbon, but not tightly, leaving it open sufficiently to care and for the condensation. The opening of all the valves, the radiators, coach, just drip valves, and let the condensation steam the water, but thereby getting the circulation through the heating of the pipes, the coils, and if the will not heat the car over the change of the hour within there is not a radiation enough pipes in the raise of the temperature. It is not pressure for the pipe of the gauge for the temp engine. This keeps the cars comfortable with the circulation steam of the pipe when the cars are not provided with the automatic trip of the train man. Sometimes it allows the pipe to fill with water with the cars getting cold with the engine pumping out under the tender. But there's little or no trouble with it, but it is at the top of the tender with the danger for the tender of being flushed at the water situation accumulation with the snow melting surrounding the pipe. The water will condense the steam very rapidly. Keep the back of the tank clean, the steam dry, pipe dry. 159. Steam heating valve operative. In the event of the steam heating or reducing valve being out of order, how would you heat the train until the repairs are made? Answer: if you have a mason regulating valve with a leak coming in operative because of the probable grit around the piston deep in or above the dash pot, quick repairing, removing the dash pot, cleaning the position, replacing the same. If the steam does not go into the train piping after the treatment, take out the piston, place the small block in, then its sufficient thickness for the raise the steam valve of the seat with the dash pot casing the screwed into place. This will raise the steam valve of the seat, allow the steam to flow directly through the valve into the train pipe. Of course, the valve is removed with the pressure regulated with the below valve next to the boiler attachment. If the engine is equipped with the gold pressure regulating valve, this should be failed to allow the steam to go through the train pipe, taking out the bottom of the plug of the cap. Remove the spring of the valve, and the steam will flow through the regulating valve the same as it did with the mason valve. Each end of the above type would be properly relaxed from tension regulating valve spring. If the valves are kept clean, they will give you little trouble and do not pound with the side of the regulating valve. Often springs gave for the prevents the proper operation and repairs. You have failed to mention the kind of the valve and to give you the trouble in the case it may require quickly if you can. If you're able to repair, get the valve out and steam back into the train to keep the cars comfortable and getting on time. Keep the cars comfortable and getting on time. Report the valve the repairs in the terminal at the terminal. Allow the train to get cold sometimes to make the passengers hot, and frozen pipes are expensive. 160. Changing the diameter of the eccentric. If the outside diameter of the eccentric was turned down the 1/4 inch or made 1/4 inch smaller, with the difference would be to make with the motion of the valve of the engine. Answered: in the case of the new eccentric strap applied with was bored out to fit the eccentric cam of the sheath of the reduced the diameter 1/4 inch, it would make no difference if the valve motion and the throw of the eccentric with the distance center from the center of the axle. The governors travel the valve not outside the diameter. Just figure the throw eccentric is the same as it would with the crank of any axle. Take the case for the center of the eccentric would be award out 2.5 inches for the center of the axle, or a true center of the eccentric cam or sheave. The distance is called the radius of the eccentric. The throw of the eccentric of the word would equal the distance of the radius of 5 inches, regardless of the outside diameter of the eccentric. 161. Type of locomotives. Will you kindly give the rules and the name of the decapped engine with a trailer? The AT&SF road has such engines with 5 drivers and a 2-wheel truck with 1 pair of the trailer. There's also the engine of the B&O with the 6 pair of drivers with 2 sets of cylinders. The 3 pair of the drivers connected each cylinder set of cylinders. 1 pair of cylinders are usually placed on the other pair between the 3rd and 4th pair of the drivers. And of the first mentioned engine was designated with the compound Santa Fe type that was built with a heavy freight service with the Waldman locomotive of the Deflection in their class of the 14, 32 and 58 quarter F70. The number of the 14 indicates the total number of the wheels under the locomotive. 32 divided by 2 equals 16, and 16 equals 3, but plus 3 equals 19. 58 is divided by 2 equals 29, and 29 plus 3 equals 32, which includes the diameter of the high-low pressure cylinder. In addition, with a fraction of a quarter inch, includes that there is a truck placed at each of the end of the wheel of the locomotive. Letter F indicates the number of the driving wheels. That is B means the engine has 1 pair of drivers, C 2 pairs, 3 D 3 pairs, E 4 pairs, 5 F 5 pairs. Letter A is used for the special class for the engine with 1 pair of drivers. The number 70 indicates the 17th engine of its class has been built. The BO engine referred to the mallet type of the articulated compound. The rear 6 drivers are driven the high-pressure cylinder, low-pressure cylinders in front of the 4 drivers. The 4-cylinder and the drivers construct with the principal truck with the frame and the joint between the front and the back drivers, to which allow the forward port of the frame to decide either with the right or left under the front end of the boiler to the steam high-pressure cylinders conducted to the steam chest of the low-pressure cylinder, means the pipe of the flexible joints. 162. Position reverse lever in the point of the cutoff. The simple valve will wheel the engine with a proper condition with a no back set with a tumbling shaft with a link hanger, but the pin was set in the center of the link saddle. The engine was doing good work, but with the hard usage of the tumbling shaft that was sprung so that it had at least an inch or more back sets, and so that when the reverse lever was in center, she had about 2-3 notches in forward motion. Now, instead of the squaring tumble shaft, the shopman shortened the reach rod enough to cover the reverse level to stand in the center quadrant when the link block was center of the link. Please say what the effect had on the valve motion. She became loggy after the time was not run. What was the cause of it? Answer. At the position of the line block link will be regulated with the cutoff. The purpose of the tumbling shaft was to raise and lower the link on the block to the cutoff steam with desired poison of the stroke. We do not think that there was cause of the engine getting loggy. Perhaps this was due to the truck nozzle position of the reverse lever that should not affect the working of the engine, provided with the cutoff of the chain. Alright, the lubricator. Does the lubricator feed oil with the cylinder of the locomotive? Does it all feed with a small amount of the steam where the oil will feed the oil cylinder at all times? When the engine descending of the heavy grade with the lever to the back motion, will the lubricator feed oil into the cylinder to prevent excessive wear? Answer. When a drop of the oil rises through the water in the sight feed glass will reach to the top of the water that's carried out through the choke plug, the steam through that comes through the equalizing tube of the mix with the oil, forming the oil water with the oil pipe leading from the steam chest lubricator pressure with the greater than the steam chest pressure. If the steam chest pressure is greater than the oil water with the help of the pipe, the suspension with the steam chest pressure reducing, closing the throttle fluctuation pressure is caused by the valve opening the ports for the emission steam to the cylinders, and the oil water is carried into the valve sheath cylinder whilst lubricating them, descending of the heavy grade with the engine reverse and preventing the excessive wear of the cylinders. A water jet was turned with the term water brake would be more effective with the lubricator. Alright, 164. Testing the valve blows with the Vulcan 4-cylinder compound. How would you get the test of the valve blow with the Vulcan 4-cylinder compound? There are 8 packing rings, and I can get the high pressure for the valve rings. Then how would you test the low pressure packing rings? Answer. It is difficult to distinguish the different in blow. There are several different effects for the Vulcan compound that will produce same effect of the valve motion or the sound of the exhaust. The care may be taken to not mistake the 2 light exhausts one side of the 2 heavy exhausts on the other. 1 loud exhaust for the Vulcan compound may be caused by either ring number 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8 being broken, or rings number 1 and 8 or 1 or 8 broken, given more port opening. At the end of the high pressure cylinder, the ring is broken that goes to the opposite end of the lower pressure cylinder, produce the heavy exhaust. If rings number 3 and 6 are broken, the valve steam is diminished with the low pressure cylinder is increased with the same effect. Numbers 2 and 7 being broken will give only 1 heavy exhaust on the side of the engine, as the steam will blow past Blow past the ring from the live steam way directed for the hollow valve when the steam of the port opposite end of the valve is open. Alright, this shows the testing of the valve blows the Balkan 4-cylinder compound. 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Alright, if there is a heavy exhaust at the front end of the right side, it may be covered if the heavy exhaust at the front end of the right side may be covered with the rings number 8 and 2 being broken with increasing the pressure of a low pressure cylinder, but you can get a heavy exhaust of the illustration method of making the standing test taken from the report as follows. Place the engine bottom quarter on the side of the tested block drive with the set the brakes, remove the bolt, the indicator plug with the high pressure cylinder. If the engine is not equipped with the plugs, remove the pops or water relief with the valve of the cylinder heads to give the engine steam to make sure the throttle is open sufficiently to set back the rings against the bushings. If the port is covered to show the rings of 1 and 8 are good in order in testing the high pressure backing below, put the reverse lever in the forward motion which will open the port with the highest pressure cylinder closed with the starting valve and have the indicator plug or pop out with the back end of the high pressure cylinder. When the steam blows out, the indicator plug with the high pressure packing will may blow ring number 7 being broken. Determine what is then replace with an indicator plug with the back end of the removing the front one of the reverse lever of the back motion and make the test. If the high pressure packing is blowing, it will show that if it is ring number 7 it will not show. To test the low pressure packing in the butt, the reverse lever in the forward motion will allow the indicator plug to accept in the one back end of the low pressure cylinder on the starting valve will emit the set steam blocking steam back to the end of the high pressure cylinder with the valve in front of the low pressure cylinder. If the low pressure packing blows, it will note that the back of the cylinder and back of the indicator plug in the same position. If the rings number 3 and 4 or 5 and 6 are broken, steams will blow through the stack and the blow will not be light either case if the steam is produced and must come through the starting valve. 165. Disconnecting valve compound tandem. How would you cover the ports and holding the valve in position? Disconnecting valve compound with the tandem. Answer. The cover of the ports are the same as the simple engine, placing the valve in the center of the seat of the clamp and squarely employ the same method of the tandem. 166. Blocking crosshead. At which end of the guide with the block crosshead and why? Answer. Back end, but at least less damage would result in the case of get loose. Front head would be only one knocked out, less expensive to replace. 167. Broken high pressure cylinder head is the practical type of the drive the clamp of the board over the high pressure for the cylinder head using a live steam in the low pressure cylinder of the valve compound. No, in this case the broken high pressure cylinder head block of the valve center of on the side of the cover of the ports disconnect the main rod blocking the cross head, but the same as the simple engine running with the other side. 168. Center and cylinder center of the driving axle should be the center of the cylinder, but the center of the driving axle is on line. If not, why not? Or when possible, yet the engine from the center of the cylinder to the center of the axle's horizontal line is called a straight line engine. Straight rocker arms can be used, but one with back set. When the center of the cylinder is above the center of the axle, is produced irregularities that require more care with the putting on the main rods, the character length with the finding of the travel point to get the pin of the dead center of the position, eccentric shaft, etc. 169. Blocking links. I have a book where it says that in an event of the tumbling shaft that are broken, you should block up one link of the putting of the block above the link of block, and if necessary to back up the motion, reserve the block of the lower to the end of the link. I'm satisfied that the information regarding the block on the reverse motion is incorrect. That you should simply substitute the longer block between the top of the link with the linking block of the please divide the correct. Answer. With the link of the block to mount with the broken reach rod with the link hanger of the saddle pin with the should be in the block placed between the top of the link with the link of the block in position. Ensure the handling of the train and the forward motion block back between the link of the block at the bottom of the link of allowing enough space between the blocks. Slip link and the link block then when it is desired the block of the link with the back motion of the blocks should be reversed and placing the long block on the keeping the top of the link of the block at the short one of the bottom of the link. This very likely was intended to demonstrate the reverse locking the hook of the referred to and incorrect. Is correct. 170. Type of piston valve is explain the principal difference with the two radical different types of piston valves. Those several kinds of piston valve with the simple engines. One is the solid valve without rings and without outside emission. In Figure 1, the other hollow piston valve with the rings and the ends of the spool shown in Figure 2, internal emission. Note that the other internal emission valve emits the steam inside the spool, and on the outside of the emission valve, the emission steam from the outside of the valve when the port is open. facet, etc. What precautions should be taken if the work of the repairs have been done, such as the face of the rod, brass is filled, etc. Our figure 1 shows the lines of steam, line of steam, exhaust, and figure 1 solid piston valve without rings and outside emissions. Figure 2 shows the hollow piston valve with the rings and end of the spool with an internal commission, live steam, exhaust, and exhaust. Answer: when the valves have been faced and advisable to run the engine a short distance for the full gear lubricated with the feeding of the valve, feeding freely before coupling onto the train. The opportunity presents itself to little graphite introduced with the seam shafts for the valve seat will help to skim the valve of the seat, preventing cutting of the start using oil enough to long cutting off the valve. The trouble possible with the first few miles if there is no stop the drifting in place for the close for the throttle. But for instance, drop level the gear got full gear. Occasionally, this will allow that it would help the oil pipe getting out down into the steam shaft, but only to the valve seats. After the seats are smoothed up, the lubricator feeds down regardless of the supply. Use the dry steam always to get the best results. The brasses have been filled with on the main rods to see that the properly keyed with the set screws are tight back ends of the 3 pins when on the center front ends when on the quarter. If side rods have free when the passing center to keep the bearings properly lubricated, no trouble should be experienced. Alright, 172, broken eccentric strap. Will you be commonly explaining the following? I fire a passenger run on one of their outgoing trips, something like let go just without the shove. Drifting over to our next stop, we get down. Though I'm found with the right forward motion eccentric strap broken, leaving the eccentric in the front part of the strap riding on the shaft. We took all the broken strap of the rod off as we were getting ready to go on the one side another engine of the came and took off the train. We ordered back to the shop. Engine intended to back using the both inside back motions. As said, it was impossible to risk took my advice, which was to disconnect the valve stem, leave the good eccentric up, and block the link at the top of the link block. Some of the boys have criticized the method and wanted to know why I blocked the link and what prevented the turning over, why I disconnected the valve stem. I thought the blocking of the link would be a positive fulcrum point with the line block. I could not explain why or why the action we kept the link turning over and when it turned over. Answer is yes. Answer, your advice to the engineer was bad. Had the disconnect with the broken strap of the eccentric rod with the removed one of the bolts for the hold of the backward motion eccentric with the strap, and not substitute with the longer one bolted back end of the forward motion eccentric rod backward motion strap. He could put the lever, the back notch, and backed up at the shop. The black motion eccentric rod would almost in line with the line of the block forward motion eccentric rod had been put bolted the back up strap would hold the top of the link of the position, preventing the turning over the advisable block link of the disabled side under the above circumstances, preventing the engineer from reversing the engine in case the emergency hole should arise. He might forget to try to reverse the engine. This would have the quicker and much easier when you disconnect the valve of the rod and took off the forward motion eccentric strap of the rod, the wave of the back up the eccentric valve at the bottom of the link down to prevent it from turning over. That was only the work with the moving of the rocker arm required it would valve of the stem disconnect. The valve stem has remained connected with the valve yoke. Friction of the valve would have been greater, overcome the weight of the back motion eccentric, which would help the bottom of the link down with the valve stem disconnected. He would but would have caused the link to turn over than would the valve rod does not disconnect. 173. Cost of locomotives. Would you please give me the cost of locomotives commencing the small standard up to the heavy model engine? Answer. Much depends on specification. Following figures approximately a similar cost for the suit of the clothes, but the material workmanship must be considered as well as the appliance equipment such as the air brakes, number of pumps, etc. Standard 8-wheel, 17-inch cylinders, 8,000 up. Light switching, 8,000 up. Heavy switching, 11,000 up. 10-wheel, 14,000 up. Consolidated, 16,000 up. Atlantic type of wide firebox, 17,000 up. Compound 70, 18,000 up. So that 174, loss of heat in the working injector. Is there any heat loss of the steam used for the working injector? There's no transmission of the power without some of the loss. Heat being the power to generate the steam to work in the injector. There is loss due to the radiation pipe, the friction, steam, water passing through the them. The high velocity of the heat was lifted up with the forced water but the boiler. The amount of steam condensing the water with the heat imparted by the water, which raises the temperature. If usable energy, the balance is lost. Or at 175, broken eccentric. Would it work if the backup of the eccentric broke while running ahead? Take one bolt out over the good eccentric blade and bolt it eccentric blade on the broken eccentric to it and proceed without disconnecting vice versa. Yes, that's alright, forward motion, but the link should be blocked so that there will be no possibility of reversing the engine in the case of of backing up the broken forward motion. Eccentric, same thing could be done with the forward motion blade, but not where if you were running ahead either above the right ground within the back end of the blade with the bolt of the trap of the good eccentric of the blade only serve the holding the length of the position, preventing it tipping and turning over the length with it should be blocked with the reversing the good eccentric wouldn't govern the pro movement of the valve. While the in position with the forward motion eccentric would be braking, and while running ahead with the back of the one on the one side could not be substituted, the eccentric could be moved, and the shaft of the back of the motion eccentric could be moved, corresponding to the position of the forward motion eccentric with a disconnecting link hanger. The blocking link with the train could be taken forward motion. 176. The proportional area of the safety valve to the grade area. Will you please work out the following work out in full the following examples where with 1 square inch of the valve area with the 3 square feet of the grade area with the size of the safety valve should be used with the boiler having a firebox of 116 inches long by and 80 inches wide. Answer: the firebox of 116 inches by 89 inches would have the greater area of 89 times 116 to 10,324 square inches, or 71.69 square feet on 1 square feet. And for example, of 144 square inches and 3 square feet is 3 times 144, which equals 432 or 432 square inches divided by 10,324 by 432 gives the 23.9 square inches of the safety valve area. Therefore, 1 square inch of the valve area of the square feet with the grade area would require the safety valve that would give the opening of the 23.9 square inches. A 3 1/4 inch safety valve would have an area of 8.2958 square inches. 3 1/4 safety valves would be ample per above position and customary. Base of the safety valve opening with the evaporating water pipe the hour per minute rather than on side of the grate area. 175. Finding the stroke of the piston. What stroke of the piston should be given the locomotive with a cylinder diameter of 17 inches, weight of 0-1 drivers, 85,000 pounds, diameter driver with 56 inches, blower pressure, 180 pounds per square inch, and the tractive motor not given them will be based on its own tractive weight, allowing the ratio of 4 to 5 to 1, or 85,000 pounds of the weight of the driver divided by 4.5 is 18,880 pounds of tractive power. The formula for the getting of the tractive power which is T equals C squared times S times P over D. To get the stroke piston, will work with the example in another way to reduce the following formula from above. Taking the side of the cylinder drive with the same pressure within 85% of the boiler pressure, we have S equals 56 times 18,880 over 17 squared times 85% of the 180, 56 times 18,880 is 1,057,280. 17 squared times equals 289. 85% of 180 is 153. 153 times 280 is 49. 1.53 is equal times 280 is 44.217. 1,557,280 divided by 44,217 of the 44.217 equals 23.9 or 24 inches stroke of the piston above the engine. Or stress in stables. For the stress per square of the inch of the will be put in the stables with the firebox working under the pressure of 170 pounds per square steam per square inch. Alright, this shows the 8-wheel, or American 8-wheel, Decopad, Magul, Atlantic Consolidation, 10-wheel, and Columbia, 12-wheel, and wide firebox, some of the common types of locomotives. Inches. The stable and to be 1 inch in the diameter space with 4.5 inches for the center of the center. Answer: each stable will have the stress of 175 pounds per square inch. The sheet with the proportion of the spacing bolt or distance between the center and the two. Find the stress per square inch of the stable with using the formula 4.5 squared times 175 divided by 0.7854. Taking the stable 1 inch for the root thread of the neglecting area of the bolt screwed in the sheet. 4.5 times 4.5 is 22.5 divided by 180 is 1.75, 101.25, 1/4, 2,025 equals 30,000.7854 divided by 3,543 is 75 hundredths. Equals 4.512 pounds. Answer: 3 A stable inch in the diameter cross section of 7.854 square inches, now dividing by 3.54375 by 7.854, we answers at 4.5125 pounds. 179. Classification of locomotives. I read the short paper of Mr. Lewis for the herder speed for the CE on the CE from the CPR over the CPR has named type 2/3 series with the landing type. In this type of the main routes connected with the rear driver. We have some of the time type of the running with the Tuscan, some of the main routes connected with the front of the driver like an American type, which I believe was known as the Pacific type. I'm right, I believe. And so the classification and list of the Mr. Herbert type shown for the locomotive fire magazines, no doubt suitable for the CPR with the designated of the various type of the engine, other than that line does not mention for the Pacific type of the speak of the Pacific type of the engine consists of the engine, the four-wheel truck with the six drive, the one pair of the truck trailers under the firebox, and the frequently designed 4 to 6 2 type. Once you've solved the no doubt this balding balanced compound called the Atlantic type, the main rod connected with the pin on the front drive of the designating the type of the engine for the number of the wheels, mating with the general favor of the calling of the American engine of 440 and the 10-wheeler, the 460, the Mugler 260, and the Atlantic type of the 442, and the Pacific type 462 type, etc. See the four-cylinder balance in compounds, the profit pamphlet issued by the Way Publication Society, Chicago, price 15 cents postpaid. 180. Burned or broken gate. How would you manage a burned or broken gate entirely gone with a deep ash pit? Answer: if the grate was broken, you might be able to block up under it, so to bring in your train. But it's usually better to grate the burned, broken entry in the ground to the place where the bars across the space to keep the call with the following from the ash pan. Keep the ash pan clean. Will be reasonable free with the great troubles. Alright, 181. Grease cellars and driving boxes. With the engine equipped with the grease cellar on the driving box, how would you know with the sufficient grease is in the cellar to make the trip? If you need the packing out on the road, how would you proceed to pack it? Answer: if you would observe the closely, you will find that there are two indicators that attach to the flour plate with extend through the bottom of the cellar and our purpose of indicating the amount of the lubrication of the lubricator to the grease collar. Also to show the greasing is being fed to the general front and back. When the top of the part of the ring of the indicator with the flush for the bottom of the cellar is then the time they have been repacked. Examine them before the terminal and do not go in uneasy as they have been reached over every 30,005 to 50,000 miles. If you need to pack a cellar out on the road, you can easily accomplish this by removing the end plate of the cellar, which is held in place by two small bolts, inserting the hooks in the eyes and indicators, pulling them down as far as you can, securing them in position. You will find the flour plate will flush with the lower edge of the opening at the end of the cellar. In the case of lubricating, grease should be about 1 inch thick and 2 1/2 to 3 inches wide, cut in length of the fitting inside of the cellar plate for the first cave with the one side of the cellar and the top of the flour plate with the second opposite side of the filler space for the middle with the third piece for the pudding on the end of the plate. Release the indicators of the spring will force the grease up with the journal and you are ready to go. If you anticipate the job, the kind that have the cakes lubricating readily firmly packed for the right side of the free of the dirt. 182. Testing of the broken the bypass valve. If the bypass broken, how would you test it? And the piston valve cannot be answered. The piston valve cannot raise from the seat of the valve with the pressure for the cylinder, but the valve has covered the port with the hence of the necessity of the means of relieving the pressure of the bypass valve is placed between the live steam chamber and the emission port located in the cave of the bolted with the cylinder casting with the steam admitted from the steam chamber between the piston and piston valve. The inside of the emission type of the bypass valve held in the seat with the pressure of the steam chamber. The pressure in the cylinder of the greater than the steam chamber. The bypass valve is raised with the seat permits the steam to flow from the cylinder in the steam chamber, relieving the pressure of the cylinder in a manner for the steady and allowing them to escape the atmosphere of the would-be relief valve with the use of the cylinder head to test the broken bypass valve with the place for the rocker with the arm plumb. This should cover the ports and open the cylinder cock with the throttle. The steam will flow with the broken valve out of the cylinder cock at the end of the cylinder by the broken bypass valve is on the blow or will prevent the handling of the train but properly with the terminal of taking off the bypass valve with the case insert with the blind gasket with between the bypass valve with the case and the cylinder casting. In some cases, they may be able to block the valve in position without removing the cap. 183. Broken driver in the trailer spring and hanger or equalizer. How would you proceed to block up the broken driver spring with a spring hanger or equalizer on the Class D engine? If however the broken trailer spring or hanger in the Class D of the Northwestern type. Answer: for the broken front of the drive spring, run front of the driver up with the wedge, then pry up the front end of the equalizing near of the broken spring until it is about the normal position. Place a block either between and in front of the equalizer, lower of the bar of the frame, and between the back end of the equalizer to the top of the rail of the frame. This gives you the main drive of the trail spring is now from the front end of the drive of the wedge for the back drive of the wedge. Block between the top of the front of the driving box frame for the so that the front of the driver will carry the load, remove the circular of the bars. The equalizer broke between the front and the back drive of the racing the engine with the jacks in any other manner of the block between the lower hanger pins and the bottom of the top of the rail of the frame. When the trailer spring breaks, this also allows the end of the cross equalizer near the end of the broken spring with the drop of the safety hanger. First jack up the end of the cross equalizer in the position with the block on the U-shaped safety hanger to hold until they have ready to move it. Now raise the back end of the engine frame so she will ride level to remove the broken springs and take up the tie and piece of the rail and place the end over the trail box and chain front of the cross equalizer back end of the frame with the hanger of the pin. Remove the block from the safety hanger under the cross equalizer. Let the usual load come onto the trail boxes. In the front hanger of the trail springer should be brake with the raised of the back end of the engine disabled so to relieve the trailer spring. The jack end of the cross equalizer next to the broken hanger. The pry down front of the trailer spring with securely chained to the end of the spring end of the cross equalizer. The back hanger of the trailer spring with the broken raise of the back end of the engine. Also jack up the end of the cross equalizer spring and relieve the spring with then pry the back end of the spring down, chain it so it will not work off the hanger pin. 184. Guides and crossheads not in line. What would be the result if the guides and crossheads were not in line? Excessive wear on the side of the crossheads and guides with unequal wear in cylinder packing rings, difficulty keeping the piston rod packing, the blowing, wearing out rapidly, trouble with the main rod brasses, especially with the front end of the main rod. Alright, 189. Well, sorry, 185. We're going to look at the picture real quick. The method of blocking and broken springs and spring hanger with the equalizer. The first rave of the running of the wheel with a wedge with the block was indicated with the upper figure, and the next rave, the second drive of the wedge indicated with the lower figure will release the tension of the block and replace on the spring indicator. – 185. Superheated steam. What is superheated with the steam? Superheated steam. The steam heated with the temperature of the above due to its pressure. The temperature of the steam is contact with the water dependent on the pressure under which the generator is shown in the steam tables. While superheated steam is high temperature. 186. Method of superheating steam. How is the steam superheated with what benefits is derived from it? The steam is superheated with the passing through the system of the pipe with the coals that place from the smoke box for the purpose of the steam passing from the boilers to the cylinder absorb the heating with the smoke with the gas engaged with the drum through the flues and the stack. The increase of the temperature. Superheated steam therefore give the higher efficiency with the steam and the engine efficiency with the engine therefore loss of the heat of the condensation which comes in the contact with the wall of the cylinder. There are many types of superheaters. Usual benefit derived from the use of the claimed about 13% higher efficiency. 187. Disconnecting compound locomotives. In the case of the necessary to disconnect one side of the Vulcan compound locomotive, how would you cover the supports for the holding the valve in position with a tandem? Answer. With the Vulcan compound would place the valve in the center of the seat with covering all the ports of emission with the clamping of it in position when the tandem would employ the same method of a simple engine. 188. Lap and lead. Will you kindly inform me what the lap and lead is and what its idea is, what it is for? And I'm not in touch with the railroad men, and the book I have does not make it clear to me. Answer. Lapping is the amount of the edge of the valve with extending over the emission of the edge of the steam port when the valve is the center of the seat with the mid-travel from the purpose of the working steam expansively. If the valve had no lap steam would follow the piston full length with a stroke. In other words, the cylinder would be filled with the steam, the chest pressure twice every revolution of the driver. By having lap of the valve of the emission with the steam that can be cut off with any desired position with the stroke of the piston of the object of the effect of the economy with the use of the steam. Lead is the amount of the port open with the valve of the piston as being in the stroke on the dead center of the serve of the cushions. The piston, the reciprocating part for the end of each stroke of the absence of the compression back pressure of the amount of the lead depends directly on the position eccentric of the shaft, the relationship of the crank pin, and hastens with the effect every function of the valve in portion with the amount given with the well lap, and can only increase or reduce or substituting wider the valve of the planting the edge of the only old one reduces its width. Alright, 189, deflection of the coil spring. How do you define a deflection of the steel coil spring 1 inch by 4 inches by 8 inches? In answer, in asking the question, number of the coil strength of the spring should be specified rather than the height of the spring. In order to get the deflection, there's forces will be taken the spring shown in the illustration measuring 1 inch by 4 inch by 8 inch having for the coils. Well, we have from Kent W as to say that its working load for the spring 3.3297 equals S D squared over D. Alright, the ultimate tensile strength of the per square inch of the material in case for the which is 60,000 pounds. D, and little small d is the diameter in bar in inches, which is 1 inch. D, the diameter of spring in the center of the bar. Now strength of working load is obtained with using this formula. Thus, W is 3.3927 times 60,000 times 1 over 3 is 7,854 pounds. The load will apply to the spring above the dimension with any number of the coils, not to get the deflection from the Kent. The deflection over the oil coil in terms of d square, or the diameter of the spring center of the bar, square times W over d diameter of the bar in inches times C. Alright, diameter of the spring in the center of the center bar, W is imposed load, D the diameter of the bar in 16th of an inch. C the constant of whose value of 30 of the round shield. Substituting, we now have 3 times 8 times 7.854 divided by 16 square, 16 times 30 is 0.18 inches. Deflection of the one over the coil. There are 6 coils shown. The spring of 1.108 times 6 gives the deflection of 6.648 inches, which loads at 7,854 pounds. Alright, on the right you see the deflection of the coil spring, the diameter, 8 inches, 6 turns. The diameter of the spring is 3 inches. 190 radius bar. We'll give the proper name of which we can call the tongue of the engine truck of the consolidated locomotive. The answer is the class of the engine will call the pony, the bicycle truck with the tongue of the U referred to as the V-shaped frame. Proper name of the radius. 191 fitting the driver boxes. How would you fit the driving box for the engine weighing 200,000 pounds? Or superintendent to move the power over the claims to bore them with a 1/64th of an inch along large for the journal, but then let them go without fitting. It is common to practice foul out the crown of the brass with about 3 inches wide with the fill with the foul with the scrape of the good bearing on the side. The weight of the boxes will soon bring the bearing down on the crown. We've seen the brasses bored out at 1/64th of an inch larger than the journal hole of the board, and brass of the babbitt with the board out, leaving the babbitt spots higher than the brass. They run good without fitting in the brass with the journal. The superintendent no doubt successful in employing the method if the engine properly broken in, running with good. Several expense of the fitting is not in general practices. 192 squaring of the valves. Do you think the proper running over the full travel of the valve of the locomotive, the forward and back gear, with dividing the valve travel between the two gears, the reach of the rod, the adjust the eccentric rod so that they will divide up each of the side, porting the openings equally without pulling up the main rod, which will square the dead end center? Answer: we presume that you mean the square when hooked with to short the travel of the valve of the cut off, would say hardly on all cases for the engine. It usually closes the work to get them squared with the main rod up, and would not recommend the system. 193 piston valve and changer. I would like to know the proper name of the valve cylinder of the piston valve. I've heard it and called the steam chest. Is that proper? Answer: hardly. The proper name of the piston valve chamber. It would not look like the report of the steam chest leaking in the piston valve engine. It would be like a correct piston valve with a chamber leak, and therefore the customary to call it the steam chest. Not customary to call it the steam chest. It would slide valve of the engine with the chest with the broken. The new chest could be applied. Would be a piston valve engine with the valve chamber the broken. It would have the passage to the new casting made with the usually consists of the cylinder and the valve chamber with the ports of the emission exhaust steam. The valve chamber is bored out with large enough through the insert of bushing, which is called the valve chamber bushing. Dimensions of ports of piston valve and engines. How do you get the dimension of the ports and piston valve engine? Answer: the accompanying sketch shows the end. The end and partial side view of the piston valve chamber, bushing and cylinder. Alright, and the port of the side of the valve of the port side, the part of the side view of the piston valve chamber with the bushing and the cylinder, and speaking with the width of the ports and measure for the width of the same of the sliding valve, with the take of the width for the full line shown with the bushing and the width. Dotted lines show where the chamber is cord out to allow the steam to flow into the port with the leading cylinder, the bridges and the bushing to keep the rings of the piston valve. Printing the ports of the valve piston passes over them and the width of the port opening for the bushing to get the length of the port. Measure the short distance between the valve chamber and the cylinder is shown in the sketch, and this will give the side width of the length of the ports. 195, wherever the crosshead gives, and there's a Brooks side 6 wheel connected with the piston valve engine with the witching of the surface of it that has come under the observation. She has double the guides. Main pins are brought back to driving wheels. Eccentric that are on the middle axle. She worn out with nearly 3 crosshead gibs in 1 year, 5 months, and 5 months of service. The first one was put on one side. The first one was put on was sided with the soft brasses. The next one was applied to one only lasts about 6 months. The one now is nearly worn out and babbited. The trouble is all on the left side of the machinist say that the guides are perfectly aligned. Will please say that why they were out so fast on the side of the engine. Answer: it would be difficult to say, just say what is the cause of the crosshead gibs wearing faster on the left on the right side of the engine, unless it was due to the difference of the metal of the gib, less the oil was used to the side of the than the other. If the engine of the sandbox filled with the left side daily, or the sandbox leaking along sand to get down on the guides between the between the wearing surfaces would cause the excessive wear on the sides. Cultivate the art of seeing things that you may locate it. You may be unable to see say where there were great differences wearing of the gibs, or if they were equally bearing surfaces properly lubricated. 196. Pressure on the flat and the cone shape of the surface of the take of the piece place for the piece of pipe in any length of the side of the screw on an ordinary cap at each end of the argument of the friend was that if one of them was flat surface inside, while the other one was cone shaped with per sketch, the pressure would be considerably less for the cone shape at the end of the given with the pressure inside of the pipe than it would be other end, which would have the flat surface inside. I claim the pressure will flow in angularity. The surface given the pressure of the place is a state difference in pressure obliged. To show the pipes, the pibs, and with the flat cone-shaped caps. Your answer: there would be no difference from the pressure of the extent of each of the caps ending up from the force of the lift of the pipe and the strip of the threads of the pressure of the equal. That brings to mind the valve that was made with the back end of the angle to show the fine lines at the cone-shaped cap in order to reduce the pressure on the back of the valve. If it was found that the pressure on the valve seat was the same as the valve with the flat back, theoretically we will take it above the cut of the example. The diameter cylinder pipe of the 20 inch with the drawn to the scale of the 1 inch with the equal to 1 foot. Let the interval pressure be 14.15 pounds per square inch, standing with the force of the cap of the pipe cylinder presented with the line A and B drawn on the scale of the 12 pounds of the inch, 1 pound per inch with the scale. Drawing the pressure of the cap of the 1 equalizes the area of the 20 inch circle that was multiplied by 14.15, which equals 4.445 pounds. Let the cap 2 be a 45-degree cone, but the area of the cone will equal 444.5 square inches. Not effective with the pressure on this area. Tending to remove the cap must have the resultant two forces equal to AB and acting the perpendicular force of such a cone at the right angles to each other, AB and AC, which equals the sin of the angle of 45 degrees multiplied by 14.15 pounds equals to 10 pounds. Then 444.5 area of the cone square inches multiplied to the pounds equals 4.445 pounds. Same as cap 1. There's no difference. 197. Sling stage boiler. What is meant by a sling stage boiler? Answer: the boiler built with the crown bars are as shown as sketched. Note that the end of the crown bars rests on the side sheet, that the bars are also supported between the ends of the sling stays and fastened to the crown bars of the dome. The roof sheet of the boiler, which turn the hold down the crown bolts of the passing through the crown sheet, are riveted over the sling stays in the crown boiler. If the bolts were severed or riveted. Severed and riveted the crown sheet dome sheet, it would be not necessary to use the crown bar. The boiler would then be called the radial stayed bar. Or 198, leaky mud rings in the winter and summer. Why do mud rings leak worse in the winter than in the summer? Answer, on account of the greater difference in temperature caused by the greater expansion of the contraction of the wider fireblocks, often due to the lack of the proper lubrication. Time expansion pads of the braces unequal the expansion frame of the boiler, reducing the strain of the mud ring throw sheaths and the expansion pads of the dry and properly oiled. Alright, 199, throttle and cutout. Throttle and cutoff. What would you advise for the best for the result of the pulling of the train center stroke with the full throttle with a little more stroke and less throttle? I find I can keep the high easier more than the stroke with the less throttle. Answer. What advice for the engine would work with it? She would do the best from the shut off of the cutoff with the full throttle with the will not rule and always prove the satisfaction with the high pressure engine with the slow speed as well as the low pressure with the small engine for the years ago. It is necessary from the engineer to have the air with the sound with exhaust and manipulate the throttle with the reverse lever to obtain the work of the engine from the engine as it have the good eyesight with the safety handling of the train. 200. Your petticoat pipe down. What would you do if you were out on the road and the exhaust nozzle came down? We presume you mean the petticoat pipe instead of the nozzle. If we could not in place, would we reduce the train going to the terminal, report it. But if the outside of the point would try to put and it would be long after the fire was drawn, it's almost impossible to adjust the pipe in the front end of the engine with a fire in the box unless the adjustment it can be made from the outside. Alright, 201, cut the tape.